Hello all and welcome back. Today we are going to draw Stitch, but not just any Stitch. We're going to dress Stitch up as the Sentry because I enjoy doing these little mashups. And the Stitch movie comes out this week. Well, it came out last week actually. I'm a week behind on that because I figure I'd give everybody a chance to go see the movie, take it in, decide if they like it or not. Hopefully, you all do. I'm sure I'll see it sometime this week. I don't know. But I want you all to take it in, and if you enjoy it, come along with me and draw the Stitch as the Sentry. I picked the Sentry because, well, The Thunderbolts was a pretty darn good movie, and I enjoyed Bob. And I also read the original Sentry back in 2000, so let's get to all the fun. The Sentry's first appearance was in 2000, Bob Robert Reynolds. He has quite the interesting origin, actually, because when he came out, they didn't treat it like, oh, okay, issue 10 of the Avengers, we're going to introduce this new character. What they did was they started a campaign, because back then they had things in magazines and they did interviews, and they basically said they were digging through the Marvel archives and they found a character that they didn't know existed, a character created in the 40s or the 50s by Stan Lee. And they're like, what is this? Who is this? It was a mystery, and the Sentry was the culmination of that mystery, a character who was somehow wiped from history, and what happened, and who was he, and where did it come from? And so that was intriguing when you saw that, and you're like, what's going on? I need to know what this is. So when the Sentry came out, I made sure to have the local comic shop put that in my pull box so I could read it as soon as it was released. So after all that hype, the book came out. And did it live up to the expectations? Yes, I think it did. First of all, the art was by Jay Lee, so anything by Jay Lee is always worth reading, even if it's terrible, because the art's going to blow your mind. And, I said that in the last video. I guess a lot of things in the comic world blow my mind. But anyway, the story picks up with basically a broken down, he's kind of a drunk, he's living in a crappy house in the middle of nowhere, apparently has a lot of land, and he wakes up in the middle of the night, his wife's next to him, and he's having a feeling of dread. Something's going to happen, something's coming back, something scary, something awful, something that could end the world, and he doesn't know what it is, but he knows it's something called the void, and he can't get it out of his mind. And he's starting to have visions of himself as a superhero. And when he has these visions, it's really kind of cool because it'll be like from the Silver Age, so it looks like Jack Kirby drew the book. Or it's from the modern age, well, not the modern age, the Copper Age, so it looks like Rob Liefeld drew the book. And they have all these flashbacks, and there's a photo they use a few times of an actual person. I guess the colorist actually made a costume and dressed his friend up as the Sentry and took this photo, and it was the iconic photo of the Sentry, and that was supposedly taken by Peter Parker. And so he's having these flashbacks and these feelings of dread, and he thinks he's important and somehow he could save this world. And then he starts thinking about a potion that he takes, and the potion gives him the superpowers and makes him the Sentry, and his memory starts slowly coming back. And then he appears at, not the Baxter Building, because I guess that was destroyed, so the remains of the Baxter Building, and he's standing on top of a crane, and Mr. Fantastic shows up, and he's like, do you remember me? And he's like, no, why should I? And how did you get here? There's so much security here, nobody could get in here. And he's like, just remember this, and he says something like unicorn. So Mr. Fantastic is intrigued by this because he can't get it out of his mind. Like, what is this? Who is this guy? He seems so familiar, yet I have no idea who he is. So he goes back and he's talking to Sue and he's talking to Johnny, and Johnny and Ben the Thing, they're watching trash TV, like a Jerry Springer type show. I don't remember which one. And while he's talking to Sue, he notices in a corner that there's a shelf, and in the shelf there's a unicorn statue, a head, and the statue's on top of a videotape. And I should pause here for a moment just to point out that these Stitch videos, they go by pretty quickly because Stitch is a pretty simple character to draw. You know, he's a little teardrop body and these little Popeye type arms and these stubby little legs. Sometimes I make them with more human proportions, and even this one is a little more human looking. And then, the Sentry's costume doesn't have much to it. It's just like a yellow and a blue and some black. So it goes by pretty quickly. In fact, I have this video playing slower than most, because if I didn't, the video would be about 8 to 10 minutes long and we'd pretty much be done already. And I didn't think that would be very fun for you guys to watch, so I slowed it down, and that'll give me time to finish talking about mostly the Sentry, because we did Stitch already, and if you saw the cartoon, you know all about it, and you're probably going to go see the movie, so you don't need me to rehash the movie, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm sure it's fairly similar with some differences. And if you haven't seen it yet, I'm sure you don't want any spoilers, so we don't want to do that to you either, because, I don't like it when people spoil movies for me, and I don't want to do that to you. But getting back to the whole story, they watched the videotape, and it's basically Reed warning him, if you're watching this, we're in trouble, the whole universe is in danger, and there isn't really much we could do about it. And then the tape goes all crazy and fades out, and the VCR lights on fire, and Johnny's like, hey, Johnny Storm, he's Human Torch, he's like, hey, I had nothing to do with that, don't blame me. So there's another mystery. But as that's happening, the Sentry, Bob, Robert Reynolds, if you saw Thunderbolts, and they call him Bob all the time, it's just one of the things. And he starts remembering who he is, and he starts realizing that he's starting to see things that are hidden in plain sight, and nobody notices they're there. Somehow the world was made to forget him. So he runs into Spider-Man. I guess they were really good friends, him and Peter Parker. And he calls him Peter, and he's like, I don't know who this Peter is, and I don't know who you are, buddy, but, this isn't really funny, and I don't know what's going on, so, just take your craziness and go somewhere else. And then Spider-Man turns his back for a second, and the Sentry's gone. He didn't set off his spider sense or anything. He just disappears. And then he goes and visits the Hulk, and the Hulk actually remembers him. Not Banner, the Hulk. And he treats the Hulk kindly, and he's gentle, and it's the more of the Hulk smash Hulk, but he's in a calm moment. But he's not yet Banner. I think this was the time when he turned into the Hulk at night, so he was Banner during the day and Hulk at night. And so the Hulk remembers him, but it's the Hulk, so there's really not much he could do. But the Hulk promises that he's gonna stand by him if anything happens, and he's gonna fight with the Sentry to save us from whatever. And then Bob's standing in a street, Sentry, and he switches his perception a little because he's become more aware, and the potion's kicking in, and he's getting most of his memories back. And he sees his base of operations, this giant tower, I think it's called Clock, and it's in the middle of Manhattan. It's just this giant tower, and it looks like Hela's headdress. It's got all these spiky tendrils coming off it. And the computer tells him that he can't tell him what he wants to know. He's under strict orders not to tell him, and it was basically him and Reed Richards that did that. Then Reed shows up, and they remember him, and he's like, oh my god, how could we forget you? We're so sorry. But getting back to the drawing for a minute here, as you can see, we're already inking it, and we're, 5 minutes in? 3 minutes in? I have no idea, because the clock on my recording software is being a little wonky and not telling me the exact time. But yeah, this goes by really quickly, and we're going to be on the colors in no time. So it turns out Reed Richards was his best friend, and he betrayed him, and he doesn't know why, and the Sentry doesn't remember why. And then Doctor Strange shows up and says, I'm the one who blew up the tape, and I'm trying to keep this from coming out because we don't want him to remember. We don't want him to come back, but I can't tell you why. And, a bunch of other things happen. I don't remember everything. Although I did reread this last week, so I would be ready for this video. But I got the memory of my mother, so I apologize for that. And one thing leads to another, and it turns out the Void is coming. And the Void is this dark cloud of a man, and he's super powerful, and he can bend reality, and he starts to beat on the Hulk and hurt the Hulk, and he's destroying the Hulk, and he's fighting the Sentry, and heroes are dying down in Manhattan and the city shaking apart, and they're on Liberty Island for the face-off. And the Sentry, he's kind of like Marvel's Superman. Like, he's like Hyperion and all them. He's super powerful. Some people think he is more powerful than Superman, but when it comes down to a fight between characters like this, the money is always on Superman. Superman is always going to win. That's just who he is. He's the original superhero. He pulls it out, even if he's outmatched. He finds a way to win. He's Superman. He's hope. He's the embodiment of all that's good in the DC universe. Unless you get a crappy writer who decides they want to make an evil Superman, and you get injustice and stuff like that. But Superman is Superman. And that's another one we're going to do in July, because the movie's coming out, and I actually enjoy drawing Superman, even though it's a pain in the neck to get him right, because you don't get that jaw and that face right. He just doesn't look like Superman. And the Sentry is one of Marvel's Supermans. He's super strong. He's got the power of, I think, 1,000,000 exploding suns. And he also has matter manipulation. He's on level with the Molecule Man. He could break things down to a molecular level and rebuild them. In fact, he's even fought the Molecule Man and won. And he's one of Marvel's most powerful villains. So that's no small feat right there. But Superman's pretty much immune to that. Especially the modern Superman, which is a combination of all the Supermen from the Golden Age to the Silver Age, and all those feats happen. So the Superman we have now is pretty much unbeatable. He's a force of nature. So back to the drawing. As you can see, the inks are pretty much done. I just got to spot the blacks and get all that in. Because, of course, that's still my favorite part of every drawing. And we even put a few detail lines on Stitch, even though cartoons normally don't have this kind of stuff. But I felt I needed more than just white with a little black on them. So I added a few more details I normally wouldn't add on something like this. But not too many to make it look odd or out of place. At least I don't think. So they're fighting in Manhattan, the Sentry and the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and the Hulk and Spider-Man, and the Void is just cleaning house. He's messing up everybody. He's more powerful than the Sentry, it seems. And they pretty much figure the Earth is lost. We don't know how to stop this. But then they all remember that the problem, the reason why they made everybody forget Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, was because not only was he Earth's greatest hero, he was also Earth's greatest enemy, because he was the Void. The problem with him was he was unstable, and when he got the power, that didn't really help much. It just made it worse. So he became the Sentry, which was his good side, his heroic side, his best side. Oh, I gotta stop for a second. This here is, I want to show you how to make like a background that looks like you drew a building but you didn't, and I figured this was the way to go. So I did a Google search and I found an Avengers Tower because of the Thunderbolts movie, and I put Creative Commons and copyright free. So I hope this is, and if it's not, and the artist happens to see this, I apologize, and I will give you all the credit you want and whatever, but we'll do that then. So what you do is you take a photo and you basically make it black and white, and you turn it into, it looks like an ink drawing, and that's what I did here. If you want to know how to do that, because I do it in another video coming up, a Spider-Gwen, I'll do a separate video on that to show you how to do that. It's really simple. And as you can see, we're already on to the colors. I mean, this thing is flying by. The colors take a little longer, but not a lot longer. It's more just figuring out the background and everything. As you can see, I got the color swatches on the bottom again. I don't always do this, but Stitch, it's just easier because there's a lot of different blues on him, and you never will remember getting them right with the color pickers and everything, and I don't want to have a picture of a Disney Stitch on the screen. I'm sure that's not a problem, but it's just easier to put the colors ahead of time and then start filling them in. And I'm also using that fancy new color dropper tool, so everything fills in nice and quick. And so it's starting to look like Stitch now. We got his basic colors in. Now we just need some yellows and some blues and the Sentry and some highlights. So going back, the Sentry, it turns out, is the Void. So they couldn't stop the Void last time, so the easiest way to get rid of him was to kill the Sentry, Bob Reynolds. But they didn't really want to kill him because they're heroes and they're not just murderers. So what they do is, with the help of Doctor Strange and the clock tower, his sentient AI clock who helps him out, and if his name's not Clock, I apologize. I don't get everything right in these videos because I'm going by memory. They make the world forget. They set up a field that engulfs the whole world. So he forgets he's the Sentry. His friends forget he's the Sentry. The world forgets he's the Sentry. And they also forget the Void. So it buries the Void too. So that's how they saved him last time. So they do a mad dash rush to the clock tower, and they got to rebuild the machine to make you forget. And they get it all done, and they save it all in time. And the world is safe. The Void's defeated. Robert Reynolds, the Sentry, he forgets who he is, and it just kind of ends on a thing where he's going off to a therapy session with his wife, and he's apologizing, and it's a good story, and it's kind of fun to have something like that where it's a hero who was around forever and nobody remembers him, and he comes back to save the day, but it turns out that he was the villain all along. And that was it for the Sentry for a little while, and until they brought him back. But back to the Stitch Sentry that we got going on here. Now we're adding in the shading, so we don't need all those color swatches anymore. So I took them off the screen because they're distracting. Because now I'm just going to take whatever color he is, darken it a little, and put it on to shade him up. And pretty soon we'll have a complete Stitch Sentry. I also used a rough textured brush on this one. I'm not sure I like it, but it's not bad, and it gives it kind of more of an organic look to it. But I'll decide on the next drawing if I want to use it again. But since I started with this one, we got to stick to it here, and you can't really tell unless you're really zoomed in, and it's all messy. So then they brought the Sentry back. A few years later, he had another miniseries. John Romita Jr. drew that one, and if you listen to my Daredevil video, you know that I'm a big fan of John Romita Jr., but I didn't read that one, or if I did, I totally forgot all about it, so I have no idea what happens in that one. But eventually the Sentry ends up in the Raft. That's the superhuman prison that they have in the middle of the ocean. They show it in the Avengers movies. That's where they're keeping the Falcon and all the people after Winter Soldier, and they capture it and they put him in there. And then they come break them out in the middle of the ocean. It looks like a giant donut prison. It goes into the ocean, and it dampens your powers, and you can't do anything. And they were doing a new Avengers series. I think it was the new Avengers series. I don't remember the year, 2005, 2006. And they're putting a new team of Avengers together, and it includes Wolverine, and it includes Ronan. That's Ronan's first appearance. And they break the Sentry out. And when they break the Sentry out, the first thing he does is he grabs Carnage, the symbiote, the Venom villain, for those of you who don't know, but I'm sure most of you do, flies out into space with him, rips him in half, and leaves him in orbit because he was in the prison causing havoc. And that's the first thing the Sentry does in the series, and it's like, whoa, hey. But eventually they brought Carnage back, so we don't have to worry about missing out on any fun new Carnage stories. I'm not sure how that happened either, but he got pulled out of orbit and brought back. And then, of course, the Sentry appears in the Thunderbolts movie. He's a little different. He was an experiment run by Vontessa, whatever the heck her name is, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And again, he's kind of like a drug addict, a meth head, and he stumbles onto a project as a test subject to create a new super soldier. And he's the only one who works on it. Everybody else dies. But of course, him being a meth head and a drug addict, he's not a bad person, but he also has a dark side, and that dark side is the Void. So once he starts using his powers, the dark side starts to take over, and then he causes all kinds of trouble and starts basically bringing people into his Void. The Voids come into him, and it's basically your worst nightmares relived, and you have to live through them over and over again, but there's different rooms, so everything in your life that's happened is a different room. And he's in the safest room of his house, which is his father's attic, I think, in his bedroom, because I guess his father was abusive and an alcoholic and all that fun stuff, which caused him to fall down that rabbit hole. And the funny part is when they all meet up, because they all go into the void to help the Black Widow. And when they all show up and they're helping out in the void, and it's Bucky, and like, Bucky, how you doing? How you getting through this? He's like, oh, my life has been great, so I'm having a blast here, because Bucky had a terrible life. He got thrown off a cliff. He lost his arm. He was brainwashed as a Hydra agent. He didn't know who he was, and his story's a mess. Maybe we'll do a Winter Soldier drawing so we can talk about Bucky, because Bucky's one of those characters that's supposed to be one of those stay dead forever types that they brought back in the 2000s, but they did a really good job with him, so I can't complain about that. I got the whole Brubaker run in a box somewhere where they bring him back. So here you can see I took that Avengers Tower and I'm turning it into a background drawing, so I'm going through all the different color modes to find the one that works best, and I picked this one. I end up darkening it and making it bigger and finding a space for it and moving Stitch around, because we're pretty much almost at the end of the drawing. So yeah, so the Thunderbolts, obviously, hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, but they get Bob out, they save the day. They call them the New Avengers now at the press conference when they're about to take care of Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and she announced them as the New Avengers, and then like, we own you now, and then, you know, they're not really the Avengers, or they are the Avengers, who knows. Apparently the Sam Wilson Captain America's suing them for the trademark name and all that. But I also put the sun in the sky on this one because this takes place during the day, not the nighttime like most things I draw are with a dark background, because it's a Sentry. He has the power of 1,000 exploding suns. So I decided to lean into that with this one and make it more of a bright and colorful thing. And putting a blue background over a blue Stitch is kind of iffy, but for this one it works, and I adjust things a little bit and bring it all together. See, we're moving the Stitch around so you can see the A on the Avengers Tower. I mean, what's the point in having the Avengers Tower if you're not going to see it? So, yeah, there we go. This is where we start getting to making the background pop a little bit and cleaning it up so that the Stitch isn't just floating in a mess of just one color blue. Oh, and another Sentry thing that has nothing to do with Thunderbolts, but they did a King in Black storyline with all the symbiotes and Venom, and to show how powerful Null was when he came to Earth, they had the Sentry attack him, and Null ripped him in half like he did to Carnage in that issue of the New Avengers. So it's kind of like a full circle thing. He ripped the symbiote in half, killed Carnage, and then the symbiote God rips the Sentry in half, which everybody's like, there's no way, the Sentry's too powerful, that wouldn't happen. And the writer pretty much admitted that. He didn't really know much about Sentry, he just wanted to prove a point about how strong Null was, so he had him kill the Sentry. And with that, that's pretty much all I know about the Sentry, so I apologize for that. But here we're just putting the final texture on the drawing, because you know I love throwing my textures on things. And once we're done with that, the drawing is pretty much done. So yeah, this was a little yellow, so I just bring some yellow down, and then we add my little signature thing, because I started using that again instead of signing things, and move the Stitch around, and the drawing's pretty much done. So again, thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you next week. I'm not sure what next week's video is going to be. I've been drawing a lot, and I have a few of them ready to go, so I just got to decide the order I'm going to put those out in. So Stitch Sentry is done, so thanks for being here, and hit the like, subscribe, and bell thing, and I'll see you next week with whichever one I decide to release.